So you're getting ready to retire, or maybe you just retired and you're wondering what to do with your 401k. You've probably heard there's all these different options out there. You're not sure what to do, but you also are not sure what's best to do. And so in today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, I'm going to break down all of your options. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of all these options to hopefully help you make that decision of what to do with that hard-earned life savings you've gone all these years saving, and now you have some decisions to make.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
Now, this can be more than just for a 401k. So you may be a federal employee, maybe you have a TSP, maybe you are a nurse and you have a 403b, or maybe you have a 457 account. Any employer retirement plan is what we're really talking about here today. And so when you have these employer retirement plans, you have options. And so with these options, you can either keep it where it is. Maybe you are starting a new job somewhere else and you can move that old 401k to your current one, or you can move it to an IRA. And so those are the three breakdowns we're going to do. And you're going to want to stay till the end because I'm going to give you a little hint to be aware of. We're going to give you our recommendation on on these three options, but also talk about some of the negatives and some of the things to be aware of as well. And so let's start with this first option of simply keeping it where it is. Now, honestly, the pros of this is you don't have to worry about it. You just let it ride. Good things can happen moving forward. It's going to continue growing. You have your 5 to 10 or 10 to 20 investment options within it, and it makes it a little more simpler for you. Now, we don't typically recommend this option, and one reason is you may lose track of this 401k. Let's say you have 10 401ks out there. You've worked at 10 places. That's typically not the case with the people on this channel because you have pensions, which means you've probably worked with your employer for many, many years. And so if that's you, then this may not apply. But let's just say that you have this old 401k, and often what happens with these old 401k accounts is they change ownership. They may go from Vanguard to American Funds to Fidelity. They're going to change potentially the place that's holding that asset. And if you've had an old 401k that maybe you had back when you started working a long time ago, you've probably seen that change companies a few times. And so the concern with that can come, it could get lost or you forget your password and now you have extra struggles with it. And so what we typically recommend for people to do is consolidate. And now you can consolidate into your current 401k if you're going to go work somewhere else. That could be an option, or you could move it to an IRA as we talked about. So some of the other limitations of leaving it where it is you have to remember that you don't have all the investment options out there. So in an IRA, for example, you have thousands of investment options to choose from. You can invest in anything. And so I like to use a TSP as an example. We all are familiar with the G fund. That's one of the fixed income opportunities, or maybe you have a stable value fund in your 401k or 403b. And in this type of investment, there's going to be a fixed rate of return. Now, the thing with this fixed rate of return is you can't seek and look at the marketplace and see, is there anything better out there? And a lot of times for people, they may be able to seek a better return other than that TSPG fund out there in other places. And you've probably seen this with money market accounts where if you go to one bank versus the other, one offers a higher rate. Well, if you all have your money in TSP and that's your only option, you can't shop around and find those best rates. And so typically that's an opportunity. Now, a lot of people like that there's no fees involved with, investment options within a 401k. That's not always the case. We talked about Fidelity, we talked about American Funds. A lot of times those investments, they may have an internal expenses associated with the funds that they're invested in. And so you have to be very aware. And if you just look up that ticker symbol, then you're going to be able to see what that internal expense is, what you're going to be looking for, or that expense ratio. And that's going to tell you how much you're paying for those investments. Now, you may not understand this because you may just see your return. You don't really see on the statement the fees coming out because it's technically a hidden fee. So if your investment did 10%, you may only see it do 9.5 or 9%. And so sometimes we're able to see that they're in mutual funds, which are a higher internal expense ratio funds. And we can tell clients, hey, if you just make that shift over to us, you're not paying that much more, or maybe it's the same cost of working with a team. And so that may be something for you to consider if you have that old 401k or your current 401k. Maybe it makes sense to do something different with it is ultimately the thought process. And just being able to invest in whatever you can on that side. So that's one of the limitations of leaving it where it is. And so a lot of people are concerned about this lower cost option within their 401ks, if that's what that is. And you may have index funds and low cost ETFs to choose from. And if that's the case, that's a great thing. That's something that we typically recommend for people when investing, is looking for more low cost options. Maybe staying away from the mutual funds. Not all of them are going to outperform the market. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just a matter of what do you prefer there. And that's just one of our preferences. And so with that, even if you have the 401k low cost options, you have to understand anywhere in an IRA you can get the same cost or even maybe lower cost, because again, you have the whole entire marketplace to choose from. So maybe just look at your options. And typically we don't recommend anyone to leave their money in a 401k or to move it to their current 401k. We typically recommend to move into an IRA. And when you do this, you can have someone manage it, like a team like ours or another team that you may already be working with. And so you can get professional investment management on that. Now, if you're looking for comprehensive planning, then we always say go to a team that's doing comprehensive planning. You can probably get all of that for the same cost as a team that's only doing investment management, is typically what we see. But if you're only looking for investment management and that's it, you can find that at pretty low cost around and still get the efficiencies of rebalancing and following market trends. And so that's something we would encourage everyone to do. Even if you want to DIY your retirement, no problem at all. Just make sure you at least get the professional investment management. We know that Vanguard has done studies that says that you can do 1 to 3% better, than doing it on your own, just by the simple professional investment management tips and strategies that they implement. And so that's an article that you can look up called Vanguard Alpha that can help kind of give you a little more education. If you're maybe deciding, do I want to DIY my investments or get help from someone to do that, is something we always encourage. Now, the other negative of leaving the 401k where it is that there's not going to be any Roth conversion opportunities. So sometimes there is. Some 401ks have an in-plan Roth conversion. That's something you can check on, with the person that's holding your 401k. And if that's the case, then you can start moving money from your traditional 401k and move it over to a Roth 401k. And if you do that, obviously you have to pay the taxes on it. But this is something that a lot of people are doing, especially with pensions and the diligent savers, that Midwestern millionaire we always talk about on this channel who have $1 million or more. In that case, it could make sense to do something like this. Now, again, not a lot of 401ks offer this. So in order to get that ability to do a Roth conversion, you'd have to move it to an IRA. And again, that could be a reason to move that. And things like the TSP, you can't do it this year, but next year they're actually going to start allowing in-plan Roth conversions, which can be a great opportunity. I still stick to my word that I still think it can be better in an IRA to have more investment options, but do know that a TSP is beefing up in that manner there. And the other thing to keep in mind is you can't contribute to that 401k anymore. So if you're still working, we typically want to take advantage of the company match, right? And that's free money. Well, that's no longer there. So that may be something also to consider, that now you can't get the benefit of that. Now it's seek and search what's else out there. And if you are still working, or maybe you're close to retirement, maybe you're not there yet, but getting close, then you could do something called an in-service withdrawal if you are 59 and a half or older. And this is something that we do with the majority of our clients. And it's something that's a really good opportunity to start getting ahead of the planning, moving it to the IRA, doing these Roth conversions, getting more investment options, working with a professional team to help you with that in your entire plan and putting everything together. And so those could be some options that you could look at now, even as you prepare for this future date. And now we mentioned the second option was moving to your current 401k if you're going to continue to work in retirement and you have an employer that offers it. We like that better than keeping it where it is because of the simple fact of consolidation. But again, we'd probably still suggest you move it to the IRA. But we do want you to know that is an option, and it is better than simply just leaving it. Because again, if you have 10 in 401ks or even 3 401ks, it can get pretty complicated, especially when you get up to what's called required minimum distribution time at 73 or 75. If you're born in 1960 or after your age is 75, then you're going to be required to take out money, and then you're going to have to know where to go to, how much do I need to take out, and it can get pretty complex. And let alone, obviously, if you pass away, then that just makes it even more miserable for the beneficiaries to have to go all these different places. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to be happy, they're getting money, but obviously it could be much easier with them if it's all just held in one place there. Now, that third option, as we've been talking about throughout the video, is moving it to an IRA, and obviously that's what we've mentioned is something that we always typically typically encouraged, but it's going to depend on your situation. So I want to tell you some things to be aware of doing that. So I hope you've sticking to the, stay till the end here, because if not, then you may think that, you're getting full information, but you're not getting all the disclosures, right? All the pros and cons. And so whenever making financial decisions, we always want to look at all of our options to make sure that we're not missing anything. And this could be something where I tell you not to move it to an IRA. And that's when, if you are planning to retire before 59 and a half. So there's something called the rule of 55 that you can take out of your 401k, when you retire, even before 59 and a half, without any penalty. So typically, if you have an IRA and you say, hey, I want $20,000, I'm 56 years old, you got to pay a 10% penalty on that. There's an exclusion in the 401k that allows you to still take out money while you're retired and not have to pay that penalty. And so that can be a huge advantage for someone where they haven't started their Social Security. Maybe their pension is going to be a delayed start. And if that's the case, they're going to need some money to live on. They may not have a non-qualified or taxable investment sitting on the sideline. They may have all of their wealth in tax deferred, which is what we see often. And so this can be a strategy that you can retire early. You can be able to withdraw your funds without having to take a hit. And it's something that we encourage a lot of people, right? That Midwestern millionaire, those in the 2% club, they're in a great, great, great position. And so we want them to enjoy their retirement. We want them to have the flexibility, that financial freedom we talk about, doing what you want, when you want, with who you want. And so this is an opportunity that allows you to do so. Now, we still recommend moving to the IRA though, just not everything is typically what we do. And so what that may look like is maybe you are retiring at 56 and a half and you've got 3 years until you hit that magic number of 59 and a half. Well, in that case, you may say, hey, I need $100,000 a year. That would be the most I would need. And we always want to be conservative and plan for more than you likely need. The worst thing is you go spend $100,000 per year and go, oh, wait, I need more. Well, then now we have to pay a 10% penalty. So let's say that the most you can think you could need is $100,000 over the next 3 years. And let's just say we want to be conservative and throw in $100,000 more. So we put $400,000 that's still in your 401k. Let's say that you have $2 million. Well, we can still move $1.6 million to the IRA. I mean, you're really going to need $1.6 million over the next 3 years. If so, we may force ourselves into some big issues long term if that's something that's going to be the case. Or maybe if you're expecting to need more, let's just take maybe $1 million and put over here, $1 million here, right? But we want to be smart about it because we could be missing opportunities by leaving too much in the 401k. So you got to weigh the pros and cons of it, and you don't want to be too conservative. We always want to be a conservative, as I said, but there's a chance that you could lose out on opportunity if you just leave it all there. But especially enough to do Roth conversions with to seek out other investments and whatnot is the opportunity there. And as soon as you reach 59 and a half, you can just move it all over, consolidate it, have it all in one place, and then you're sailing moving forward. You don't have to worry about that 10% penalty. So that's the things to be aware of there. And here's another pro tip that we always want people to be aware of in this situation is if you retire early, you may want to be looking to do Roth conversions as we talked about earlier. In order to do that, you have to pay taxes. So let's play this out. You move all of it to the IRA. You want to convert $100,000. Well, if you do that, where are we going to get the money to pay the taxes? Oh, Joe, we'll just withhold it from the, well, we'd pay a 10% penalty because that's technically a distribution. And so what we do with our clients in that scenario, let's say they needed $25,000 to pay the tax. Well, let's make sure we leave $25,000 in the 401k. We can take out a $45,000 distribution from the 401k, no 10% penalty. And instead of it hitting our bank account, we'll withhold 100% taxes and send it to the IRS. We got the tax bill covered. We got the money to the Roth IRA, no penalty. Everything is clean. We're able to do so before Social Security tax starts, before Medicare premium calculation comes in at 63, and then you're being in a better position, probably taking advantage of some of those lower tax brackets early on in retirement. So hopefully that gives you some education here today to think through what should you do with this 401k. And I know we mentioned the buzzword quite a bit today of Roth conversions. We mentioned a lot of tax planning with your investments. And so for those who view this, if you've stayed till the end, we always love to offer out our book. I Hate Taxes is the one I'll offer out here today for you. If you've been an avid viewer, this could be a great resource as you continue to plan for your retirement. And as I always say, I don't want to tip Uncle Sam. I want to pay my fair share, but I don't have to tip. So if you're new to this channel, help yourself to our resources here. We want to provide as much content as we can to help those who are in or near retirement, especially those with pensions and $1 million saved. So if that's you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Joe Knows Retirement.